Call Your Shot season is in full effect here on the Hard Count, and Call Your Shot season, as I mentioned in the intro to this live show, is not prediction season, where we're telling you who's winning the SEC, who's winning the Big Ten, who's winning the national championship, and it's not talking season. That's for media days. Call Your Shot season is more specific to teams in terms of what we think they could do at a more micro level, and probably in this space too as well. It's a little bit more specific to sides of the ball for your team, but I'm going to go through every conference here. We're starting with the big boy, starting with the SEC. We'll have the ACC on tomorrow's live show for you, but let's start with some of our shots we're calling in the SEC. How about just an overarching one when it comes to the conference as a whole? The shot we're calling right off the bat is that the SEC will have 2 Heisman finalists at that ceremony in New York, and they will have they will have the Heisman winner when it comes time for that to be awarded in New York. So let's recap it. The SEC will have 2 Heisman finalists, and they will ultimately have the Heisman Trophy winner. Now, if we look at the odds in Vegas, currently 6 of the top 10 betting favorites are from the SEC. 3 of the top 5 betting favorites are from the SEC. Now, it's no surprise. This is pretty much more or less a quarterback award, though shouts to Devontae Smith winning it in 2020. But 3 of the top 5 the SEC has when it comes to what Vegas thinks in terms of betting favorites. You got Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers, and Jalen Milroe. Here's the way I see this whole thing shaking out. I'm not calling my shot for who's winning the Heisman Trophy, but when I look at who is going to be up for this award, and I think who has a chance to be in the conversation for this award, the SEC has too many good teams that will be in the national championship discussion and the college football playoff discussion, and too many good quarterbacks for them to be on the outside looking in with less than 2 finalists, and again, ultimately, I believe, to not have somebody win the award. Like Carson Beck in Georgia, I think will probably be, if not the number 1 ranked team in the country going into October in that top 3 discussion. Ole Miss and Jackson Dart, if you've watched this show, you know we are buying all the Jackson Dart stock we can find and then some. Like we are on the resale market to try and find more Jackson Dart stock. Not just because the nice lettuce out the back of the bucket, all right? It's because we also like what he does on the field, and I think he takes another big jump year 3 at Ole Miss. Jalen Milroe, I've already gone on record. I think Jalen Milroe is going to be one of those 2 Heisman finalists. I think him and Kalen DeBoer will just be, absolute magic together on the offensive side of the football. Quinn Ewers, he could be the best statistical quarterback in college football this year, his 3rd year in Steve Sarkisian's system. So we go down the line here. I haven't even mentioned Nico yet. I think he's going to have a massive year. Also worth noting, in this new era of college football, with the expanded playoff, I've said this before, I'll say it again, we are starting to, I believe, round the corner into a college football playoff and a college football world that is more quarterback-driven than ever before. Whether it be the style of play, whether it be the way these kids are getting trained at the high school level and they come into the collegiate ranks super polished, like we are now entering a world where quarterbacks mean more than they ever have. And in the Heisman Trophy discussion, what have we consistently said about that award every single October, November? We say, it's really a team award, best player on the best team. What we meant by that was a team that's in the discussion for a national championship or in the college football playoff is usually going to win the award. Now, usually is the key word there. Jaden Daniels won it last year. If I had a vote, he would have gotten my vote and then some. But with the expanded college football playoff, what does that mean? It means more teams are going to be in that playoff discussion. And so, whereas before it might be, hey, you got 3 losses. That was the big thing with Jaden Daniels. Team had 3 losses. We're not sure how we feel about it as a college football public. Does he still have a chance to win the Heisman? If you have 2 losses going into November, heck, if you got 3 losses, you're going to be in that college football playoff discussion. Now, you may be on the outside looking in still a little bit with 3 losses, but you catch my drift. More teams in the national title discussion, in my opinion, will equate to more players in the Heisman discussion, and overall, that's going to favor the SEC. Again, I think you got your Heisman Trophy winner from the SEC, and we'll have at least 2 finalists. I might even, as we get further and further into this thing, I'm tempted to go with 3, but we'll go with 2 right now. Second shot we're calling here. It's Nico time in Knoxville. And we love to see it. It's going to be a lot of fun to talk about, a lot of fun to cover, a lot of fun to watch it all unfold. I'm here to tell you, man, Tennessee fans, last year your offense scored 30 points a game. Not bad. Tell you what, man, a lot of teams, they would give their left arm and a kicker to average 30 points a game. But I think Tennessee will average in the neighborhood in 2024 of 40 points a game. The reason why, there was so much talk last year around, well, Joe Milton just isn't going to cut it. Joe Milton's not good enough. He's not mobile enough. He misses too many throws downfield. Joe Milton this, Joe Milton that. And all that happened, all that was said. Guess what? He still led an offense that accounted for 30 points a game. Now, Josh Heupel came on this very show right around a year and a half, 2 years ago, and he told us through this screen right here that I'm looking at underneath the camera one. He said, Nico Imaliava is as talented a quarterback as I've ever coached. And so what I took that to mean is, okay, Nico's got some tools. Nico's got some juice. Again, probably as much as anybody else on that roster from what I can tell in a small sample size, and taking Josh Heupel's word for it. I'm assuming he is a physically more gifted version of what Joe Milton had under the hood. And that's not to knock Joe Milton. He's got gifts in spades. But if Nico can be more consistent for you downfield, if he can do a little bit more for you ad-libbing, they're going to score a lot of points. And I think it's also worth noting, we said this too, like the quantity of weapons that Tennessee has this year compared to what they had in 2023, I think it's night and day. So some of this isn't really Joe Milton's fault, is what we've been saying here for the better part of the last few months. Brew McCoy being healthy, that's massive. Squirrel White, Dante Thornton, Chris Brazzell, like we go down the list here. This offense under Josh Heupel is built to create matchups, built to create one-on-ones with how they spread you out, with how they make you cover every single blade of grass on the field. And so what that means is it's very difficult to get extra help over the top. And so when the play breaks down and Nico extends it from a 2.5-second play when he drops back to making it a 4.5-second play when he rolls out, it's tough to cover all of those guys for that extended period of time. And so I think that's going to make for very big numbers. Again, in the neighborhood of 40 points a game is what I'm projecting. That could be 38. I think as low as 37 is probably in the territory of where I would say, okay, that projection, that shot hit. But the Nico era is going to be a lot of fun, and we're calling our shot for Tennessee to average in the neighborhood of 40 points a game in 2024. Very, very similar to the 2022 vibes that the good folks out there in Knoxville got to experience. And if you're watching in Knoxville today, I mean, I'm sure you're having yourself just a very enjoyable morning on the heels of a national championship in college baseball. Here's another shot we're going to call, and we've called this shot before. We'll do it one more time for this segment. Florida is going to make a bowl game. I'm going to go ahead and project they get to 7 wins. That's not an official prediction, but I'm saying they're in the range of 7 wins. And Billy Napier is the head coach this time next year. And the reason for that being, I've said it many times, I think Graham Mertz is extremely slept on when it comes to the quarterback national picture. I think that when you look at their schedule, that gets a lot of the hype, that gets a lot of the excitement. And say, oh, they got to play Georgia, they got to play Texas, they got to play, insert X, Y, and Z team, because their November is absolutely brutal. But let's not confuse schedule difficulty for roster deficiency. Because last year's 5-7 operation, yeah, they had some issues. A lot of those guys that were talented last year come back. And also on the back end, I've said this many times, that secondary got a lot older and a lot more experienced, which is going to help them. I'll say this too. I think they catch somebody in November. Now, who is that going to be in November? I have no idea. If I knew right now, I'd put down money on whatever that future is. But I think Billy Napier has a roster that is in position to be a lot more competitive than some people want to believe. And so I think 7 wins, the right-looking 7-5, will allow him to keep his job. And again, I think they have some kind of billboard win that allows them to create some excitement for 2025. And Billy Napier is your head coach going into next season. Here's a fun one. Texas and Texas A&M. That's one we talked about a lot. That's a game that we're going to talk about a lot all the way up until it happens, because it's a rivalry we have been deprived of as college football fans. Nice little realignment gift, little alley-oop. Say, here you go. Here's that rivalry back. I think that game is played with a college football playoff spot on the line for somebody. Now, conventional wisdom would tell you Texas has a very good chance to make the college football playoff, according to Las Vegas. Who's to say Texas isn't 10-1, rolling into that spot in College Station? It's a raucous atmosphere. 10-2, if it's Texas, is probably making the college football playoff, I have to imagine, based on, depending a little bit on how that, how that one loss would look, or those two losses would look, rather. Who's to say that Texas A&M isn't 9-2 at that spot? Now, I'm not predicting it, but you look at Vegas, Texas A&M has plus 290 odds to make the college football playoff. Now, that sounds like a little bit of a longer shot until you compare it with the other teams that they are stacked up against with similar odds. Like, the only team in the Big 12 with better odds to make the college football playoff than Texas A&M is Utah. That's it. And even Utah and A&M have similar odds. Like, A&M has better odds than Kansas State. A&M has better odds than Arizona. A&M has better odds than Oklahoma State. Like, fill in the blank. A&M, according to Vegas, is saying, hey, just keep an eye on A&M. Just keep an eye on the Aggies. I know that people want to talk about the 7-5 and the Jimbo Fisher buyout and crack jokes, but, like, if we get this game and it's a spot where A&M has a chance to make the college football playoff, that would be absolutely magical. Just chef's kiss. Now, we are sort of hedging our bet a little bit by saying anyone will have a chance to make the college football playoff based on this game. So, Texas, again, we feel decently confident they will be a college football playoff team. So any way you slice it, that's going to be a fun one. But the stakes, if it is for college football playoff berth for A&M, and it's at home at Kyle Field, cinematic in every single sense. Now, here's a broader shot we're calling, and it comes to the Georgia Bulldogs. Last one for you here in the SEC. We've seen Georgia, especially last season, sort of not sleepwalk out of the gate, but have this slow climb to reaching their best football in November and December. Now, obviously, you wish that that very best game came against Alabama and Atlanta. They were dinged up. Didn't happen. It is what it is. But you saw Georgia really start to hit their stride in that last month of the season. Early in the season, saw them start slow against South Carolina. Saw them start slow against Auburn. Teams that really Georgia shouldn't have been playing around with from a roster level, we saw them struggle with, and I think large part because it took a second for them to put everything together. I'm here to tell you, Georgia, from start to finish, will be one of the best first half teams in college football, mic drop, period, the end. You say, JD, they're breaking in some new guys on defense. There's some new production that is going to have to be made up for. That's fine. Carson Beck, though, he is going from driving that offense like it was rented to driving it like he owns it. And there's that part of things. There's also the internal part of things that I don't know that we can overstate enough on this show. Kirby Smart does not have to pitch to Georgia that nobody believes in them, that they got to go improve it every single Saturday. And I'm not ever telling you that that somehow got stale or didn't resonate for Georgia, but I do think there's something to be said for the hunger specific guys on this roster feel to make their own legacy at Georgia, for Carson Beck to win his own national championship in Athens. Because a lot of those guys were on that roster. Not a lot of those guys were starters necessarily. And so I think the hunger is there. I think the internal drive is there. And not to say it was ever lacking before, but I'm just telling you, Georgia will be on a mission. I love what they have on the offensive side of the football. As I just mentioned, from an experience standpoint, they will be in go mode from week one. Like I've said this many times, God bless Clemson. They play them the first game of the year in Atlanta. I think Clemson has a good roster. I think Georgia's just going to be on a mission, and they will be in go mode from the very first time toe meets leather in the 2024 season. So those are the shots that we're calling in the SEC. Again, 2 Heisman finalists and a Heisman winner from the SEC. Tennessee will average in the neighborhood now of 40 points a game. Florida gets to 7 wins and Billy Napier keeps his job. A&M and Texas play for a college football playoff spot for somebody. In a perfect world, I mean, just for the drama side of things, both of them, Georgia will be one of the best, if not the best, first half team in America from the jump. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.